Hey, we're so glad that you are here today and grateful that you have chosen to spend your Sunday morning here with us at West, whether you are here in person or whether you're worshiping with us online. We are grateful for the opportunity to spend some time together. Today, we are going to talk about being swept up in things, swept up in the moment, what makes us get swept up in the moment, and what happens to our lives when we are willing to just go with the flow. If you are here for the first time or newer to West, we're really grateful for that as well. We invite you to stop by our VIP tent out front and let us know that you're here. Also, today, we are going to celebrate the sacrament of Holy Communion. And so if you are worshiping with us live stream, we invite you to get some bread and some juice, anything that you have around you to participate with us in the sacrament later on in the service. If you are listening to us via on demand, after the message is over, we invite you to partake in the sacrament of communion. Just because you're listening not in the current moment does not mean that you cannot be a part of the sacrament here at West. We believe that sacraments are God's gift offered to us without any price that we could ever pay. And so it is for all people. We're really glad that you're here. It's been an exciting week in the last couple of weeks, or weeks in the last weeks of the life of West. We had our back to school bash yesterday. I know many of you were able to be there in person yesterday, and we're really grateful to you for bearing the heat and staying and packing up, picking up trash and all the many things that you did, cleaning the floors and the bathrooms. You just sort of made everything happen yesterday. We're going to talk about that a little later in the service. Next week, we will show you a video of yesterday. But honestly, in the 13 years that we've had the bash, yesterday we had 1,100 children on site. We've never had that many. That is exciting. And your support of West, whether you were a part of the bash or not, your financial support of West enables us to lead the bash alongside Inspire Our Children. And the fact that 1,100 children came on site, it was just amazing. It was overwhelming in a lot of ways, but in a great, great way. And we still have 50 more kids that we'll be serving later on this week. And so I'm so grateful to all the volunteers, to the West staff who help with the bash, even though it's not a part of their job descriptions, and grateful to you for letting us be the church in that way in our community. It really does make a huge difference in the lives of people, and so we're grateful that you're here. I invite you now. I know that, singing in church is like one of your favorite things to do, and you sit at home talking to your friends about, I wish we could just sing more. But today, the next song that we're going to do, it's a song that odds are you've heard, and it goes with the theme of today. So it is Stand By Me. I invite you to stand back up now and give it some oomph and actually sing along this morning.
Awesome. Fishes and loaves.
I think it was the parent who came and said it was the
That's all right. I'm glad you stopped it because I didn't want it to play yet. It is the day after the bash, so we're giving everybody lots of grace because everyone that was here yesterday, especially the staff and especially Josh, they're exhausted. Josh is driving the moving truck, and I think at 3 o'clock when it was finally loaded up with everything, we still have to get it unloaded, but we're all in denial about that right now. And so anyway, we are going to show you a video later on in the service. It's from the second year of the bash. The bash started 13 years ago. The Saturday that we had the first bash, the very next day, these three individuals and about 37 more gathered together in a room, and it was our last time that we were together at Williamson's Chapel. Williamson's Chapel is the mother church that gave birth to us, and 40 people said that they wanted to be a part of that vision. And so we're like 13 years old with our preview services. We celebrate our birthday in September. And there's another story about people following a vision of God. And I want to share with you that story, draw some parallels to it this morning with these folks. And then I want to show you that video from the end. Because it's not about the past, it's not about the future, it's about the here and now, it's about the moments that we find ourselves in and our joining together to be swept up in that moment. Clearly, these three were swept up in the moment. They'll introduce themselves to you. you have been swept up in moments by God, whether you even realize it or not. And so let's first hear from the Gospel of Mark how this all began. After Jesus had been pushed out into the wild for 40 wilderness days and nights as he was tested by Satan, and wild animals were his only companions, angels took care of him. After John was arrested, Jesus went to Galilee preaching the message of God. Time's up. God's kingdom is here. Change your life and believe the message. Then Jesus went along the beach of the Lake of Galilee. He saw Simon and his brother Andrew net fishing. Fishing was their regular work, and Jesus said to them, "Come with me, and I'll make a new kind of fisherman out of you. I'll show you how to catch men and women instead of perch and bass." They didn't ask any questions. They dropped their nets and followed. A dozen yards or so down the beach, he saw the brothers, James and John. They were Zebedee's sons. They were in the boat, mending their fish nets. Right off, he made the same offer, and immediately they left their father Zebedee, the boat, and the hired hands, and followed. So before we have conversation, I want to tell you just a few things about that story. So Jesus has just come out of his magical God aha moment, and he's caught up in the Spirit of God. And he was ultimately known to be a rabbi, which is a teacher. So he goes and he walks along the seashore, and he sees Simon and Andrew fishing. He looks to them, and all he says is, "Follow me." Now, Simon and Andrew, you can assume that they were not wealthy, because it tells us that they were fish net fishing. They didn't have a boat. So they dropped everything and left. You read a little more that he goes a few hundred yards down the lake, and then he calls James and John. Now, they were fishing with their boat, and you can assume that they had some staff that worked for them. And they mentioned Zebedee, their dad. Jesus says, "Follow me," and they left. And they followed him. Two different groups, two different experiences, two different life histories. Both of them follow him. Historically, rabbis don't go around recruiting their people. The people recruit the rabbi. In fact, teachers historically, back then in this culture and in this time, students would pick which rabbi they wanted to follow. And then they'd go say, "Hey, I want to be a part of your teachings." The rabbi got to interview them. And actually, you know what? When we started West Church, that did happen. We would have one-on-ones and talk about why people wanted to be a part of the mission and the vision. And then some stuck. You three, I hope you still think fortunately stuck. But a lot of people didn't. A lot of people didn't want to be a part of a church that existed like this. But historically, the rabbis would interview the students. So already Jesus is turning things upside down. He's going around saying, "Hey, follow me." Now, in this story, historically, we have made the disciples the heroes. And we have talked about how courageous they were and how willing they were to drop everything and follow. And that is true. But there's something more in this story. And I'm convinced that after you hear from these three individuals, you're going to hear that historically there has been something more to the story than just some courage or boredom or whatever made you come. Now, I don't believe in prefab messages, and they have their own interpretation of this next sentence, but I feel like I gave you a good broad idea of what we were going to talk about today, last night about 9 p.m. But seriously, I wanted it to be authentic to them. You have three people that were willing to be a part of the original vision, and there are several others of you that were as well. But here we are 13 years later, and it still is the original mission and vision, but this looks a whole lot different than it used to. And not only does this look a whole lot different, so does the bash, which is something that is one of our defining flows in the spirit and the nature of God. It's why we take that mission so seriously. It's why if you're on the Pastor's Advisory Council, it's an expectation that you be a part of BASH in some way, that you don't just get to make the big decisions of the church and then be like, oh, yeah, I'm busy that day. We take living into the flow of God so seriously because it changes us, and when we're changed, the world changes for the better. So I want you guys to introduce yourselves to the people here, to our guests online. Just tell them a little bit about who you are, and I would like for you to start out and say, what made you 13 or 14 years ago, because we spent a year working on it, what made you head west? Emily, you want to go first?
I am Emily Muller, and for those of you who don't know me, I am married. Kevin and I, this is funny because when I was driving to church this morning, I was thinking about all the things that, and I know she won't want this to be about her, it won't all be, but I was thinking about all the things that Andrea has been a part of in my life besides West. And she married us, she baptized both my children, so she's been a huge part of our lives. So we have 2 children, Lola and Lucas, and they've grown up here. We, as Andrea said, when the call was made to start West, which wasn't West then, I mean, we renamed later. We'll talk about this in just a minute, but I knew immediately that I was called to be here. So we have been here. We've been through all the things West in the last, what is going to be 14 years, and wouldn't change a thing.
I'm Lance Armstrong, the original Lance Armstrong. And let's see, what got me going here? I would say initially I thought that we were going fishing because I like to fish, but apparently that wasn't the case. So I'm married to Joycelyn. We have 2 kids. They grew up here, and they started here when Wired was phenomenal, obviously, with Andrew and with Michael. Unbelievable youth that we had here. But what got me coming here was probably when you and I went to camp. We did the camp in Dallas, Texas, and it was basically a startup camp for churches. And it was just exciting, the excitement and the novelty of what we're doing and doing something different, and knowing that we can reach people where they are versus, just doing the same old every Sunday. We really learned a lot and stepped out. And West has shown me, and we'll get into this deeper too, I'm sure as well, is that we are a community and we all look after each other and take care of each other. And I could count on any of these 2, and Andrea and pretty much everybody here, phone call away, and I would help them and they would help me, and that's what West is all about.
Good morning. My name is Adam Lumley. I am married to a lovely woman and very patient woman named Christy. I don't want to try to make this all about me, but I need you to understand my perspective. I was raised in a very secular house, didn't even think about God, good, bad, or indifferent, and kind of had a fishernet experience when I was 16 years old. God banged me in the back of the head, and I moved along in my late teens with no guidance at home for Christianity or Jesus or anything. It was kind of on my own. And also, you need to know, my parents were very open about me, free-thinking wise. They let me listen to whatever I want, read whatever I want, that kind of thing. So fast forward, I moved down here in 2004. I had been to pretty much every different type of denomination and was completely done with the church. I am not a saint by any stretch. I'm probably the biggest sinner in the room, but every place I went, I felt like the church would get together and learn and dive and talk and fellowship and all these things, and they would go home. And there was all these things I saw we were supposed to do, the loving and the feeding and the less of these. And now again, I don't want you to think I was out there running around doing my own thing solo, but I was just very felt disenfranchised and was not able to connect. So I moved down here in 2004. I was a single dad at the time with 2 children in elementary school, trying to just find a place for them to fit in. I heard about the Methodist Church. I was like, oh gosh, there's this great children's program. I'm going to go to a church again. I can't believe this. I had not been in church in like 5 or 6 years. So I was going on Wednesday nights, and then I saw this thing. I don't even know what you all called it, but
The week of service.
it was a week of service, but I didn't catch all that. I called it Sweet Potato Mountain. Now remember, I'm from outside New York City, New Jersey area. I see this mission. I go walking into the parking lot of Williamson's Chapel, and there was not like a dump truck, like the big dump trucks, like the ones that are like a regular tractor trailer size. I think 2 of them had dumped a mountain of potatoes, sweet potatoes, in the middle of a parking lot. Now listen to me. Now come from where I'm from, like, this is some hokey stuff, man. What are these people doing? But what blew my mind, and it's so silly because there's so many wonderful things that, and don't get me wrong, I do believe the church does great things, but what I saw happen that day was children, 50, 100 of them, top to mid-mountain, adults at the bottom, and I'm telling you, this mountain was gobbled up and bagged in like, it felt like an hour.
In the pouring rain.
In the rain, it was cold, it was October, late October, and I was like, of course, first of all, it was amazing, but I also was like, what is this, the sweet potatoes? I mean, they're sweet potatoes, who cares? And the person in charge of the missions was our pastor. And I said to her, what is this all about? And she looked at me and said, you really want to see? Come tomorrow. And we had lined up all these bagged sweet potatoes throughout the parking lot in bags and spaces, 10 a row, blah, blah, blah. And that next day, there was hundreds of cars in a line coming through. Somebody's soup kitchen, somebody's women's shelter, somebody's this, all grabbing sweet potatoes to make, whether it was their Thanksgiving meals for the homeless or all the, just all these people. And every one of these bags, all of a sudden, in another hour, this mountain, everything was gone. And it was, again, I'm sorry I'm being long-winded here, but I hadn't seen people be Jesus like that. And that's what got me in.
When we started the launch team, Rob Fuquay, our lead pastor that said, do this, said, don't ask anybody. I'm like, you've lost your mind. You want us to launch a campus of this and not ask anybody? And he said, don't. I asked Adam one night after a Saturday night worship service, because I really didn't enjoy having worship on a Saturday night, and I was so stressed out. And he said something, and I'm like, will you please be a part of this new thing? Because Adam got the unchurched, and I didn't. And I remember at boot camp, and they call it boot camp for a reason, because they try to scare you to death about planting a church. They're like, you and all your little churchy friends, that's not going to plant a church. You got to learn to think like people that are not yet a part of the vision. And what I learned over the next year and a half was that the people that were most willing to look like Jesus and pick up the sweet potatoes out of the parking lot, those are the people that made our launch team. And if you look back at our original launch team, every single one of them had been on a mission trip or either done local missions, hands-on missions there in Williamson's Chapel and in Mooresville. And that's what made up the team. So the DNA of West has been missional from the very beginning. I'd forgotten the sweet potatoes until last week or yesterday, it feels like last week, until yesterday when Adam said, I want to talk about the sweet potatoes. And I'm like, oh. Now the interesting thing, and one of the reasons that I think the last question, I'll give you a hint, is what still brings you joy to be a part of this mission and vision? But one of the things that brings me the most joy is that now I don't lead it, you do. We have a phenomenal missions team. One of the leaders was wiping up slushy off the cafeteria or the school floor yesterday after having been there for 6 or 7 hours. And I said, do you want help? And they're like, no, I'm good. I've got it. We're getting ready to have our own West, not week of service, but a month of service this fall. We're going to call it Be Rich or something like that. And for a month, we're going to see how many hours we can collectively do as a community in lots of different ways and lots of different places. And we have a staff person. I told Lane and Dawn yesterday after Bash, I said, if I were to disappear, this would be fine. You guys have got it. Dawn bleeds loving people, and we are so lucky that she is our liaison on staff with our phenomenal missions leaders and missions team. It takes so many people to have a reach as far as our reach is, and so I'm so grateful for that. I would love to ask you guys, what's been the biggest challenge and perhaps hardest thing? Because you see, when Jesus called those 4, we like to say, oh, it's so amazing because they dropped everything and they followed him. They had no idea what sacrifice was going to be coming. The one thing I think we do when we read this story is we give them all the accolades, but we underestimate the power of God. And one of the things that I would like us to take away from this passage in Mark, and it's also in Luke, is that, you know, when God creates us able to be molded into being Jesus for other people. And the power of God is so big that those 4 individuals, even though they left everything, dropped everything, and followed him, whether they were rich or poor, even though they sacrificed a lot, God and the kingdom were still there. And so I want us all collectively to know that that same power that called those 4 disciples, that same power that changed their whole lives, that same power is here in us. It's in you. It has been in the 3 of you. So I'd like for you to share with the people, like, what's been some of the icky stuff? Because these 3 folks, they've seen it all. They've all either been or are on the PAC team, which is the underbelly of the whale. There has to be a group of people, unfortunately, in any organization that sees the underside. And they've been willing to do that and still stay in love with Jesus. So if you guys would share.
I think, and I'm going to go back to the former question just for a minute. If you know anything about me, I will overanalyze and overthink any situation until I come to a decision. When I found out, and I've been a long time, my mom and dad are still at Williamson's Chapel. I was there my entire life, and so I had to come here was leaving sort of my traditional background, and I'd always been in a traditional church, and so you know, it was sort of risky for me to leave that behind. But I remember the day that I found out that Wes was going to happen, and that what we used to call Williamson's Chapel was giving birth to a baby. I remember right after I found out, I saw Andrea in the fellowship hall at Williamson's Chapel, and I went straight up to her and I said, I'm in. And never in my life, and I mean this, has something called me so loudly and clearly as it did to come here. I didn't even have to think about it. I was like, I'm in, I'm ready. And so came here. She's right. We spent that first year, I remember being in that room at Williamson's Chapel where we sat endless nights and hours thinking about what this would look like. One of the things, and then came here, and I have been a part of some of the tough stuff. I've been part of some of the hard decisions we had to make. I've been part of some of the things that didn't feel right, but we didn't know why. Been part of some of those decisions that we knew we were going to have to make, but they were hard. And it hasn't always been easy. But what I love is this. There has never been a group of people ever around a table here that we were not allowed to debate. We were not allowed to disagree. We always have been. And we're not afraid to say, I disagree. I just disagree. I don't feel like that's the right move at this time. And what they also know about me, and they kind of joke with me sometimes, is I'm going to ask the hard questions. I'm going to ask those questions that you don't want to answer. They're just tough, but we have to answer them. Because if we're thinking about moving the kingdom of God forward, we have to answer those hard questions. So I would say it's the underbelly. She's right. It's the underbelly of the well, and it's seeing the stuff that isn't always fun, isn't glamorous.
Yeah, there's no way to make finance sexy.
No,
I mean, you
there's
just can't
not.
dress it up and make
No.
finance sexy. I mean, or HR or any of those,
yeah.
or facilities. I mean, for heaven's sake, that's not really been sexy either.
It's not.
So
It's not. And what I love, y'all, is that Andrea always has shied away from the finance piece. She always claims she doesn't want to have her hands in that, but she gets it. And I think because she gets it, I'm like, okay, I got to get it. She challenges me now, because I don't get it either, but I'll ask the questions. I just don't always get it, but it challenges me too to think, okay, now you got to get it. You got to figure all this out. So I do think it's making those hard decisions, and it's not always, like she said, it's not always sexy. It's tough sometimes, but we walk out of that room, or we walk out of any situation, and we love each other all the same.
I would say probably similar to the underbelly. Obviously, been part of that for 10 plus years, being on the PAC team. But I would say the biggest challenge for me, and hopefully would be speaking for the church as well, is always trying to stay relevant and with the times. Obviously, COVID, put a damper on everything and everybody everywhere. So it was coming up with, how do we meet? How do we not meet? How do we meet safely? How do we do the bash? How do we do missions trips? How do we not do mission trips? Just all of that over the past 3 years. COVID changed everything for everybody. So my thing would be staying relevant and fresh with ideas and just everything that we have to come up with so it's not the same old, and what kind of cool songs can we have? And I send Adam and Gary and Luann songs all the time when I'm walking. I'm like, I don't know where this would fit, but this is a cool song. And, sometimes they throw them in there. And so just trying to stay current and aware of what's going on in the world.
and it's changing so quickly. So our leadership has to pivot, which is the final point of today. So thanks for saying that.
Mine's a little more personal, but I think it applies to most. So I'd never been involved pretty much in a church at all, and then when this launched, it really took off. And obviously I'm involved in the band, and we had tons of singers, even more musicians to pick from. The music was, I don't think we ever lost anything with the music, but that's, yeah. The music was phenomenal, and people were coming and banging down the doors, and we had hundreds of people in here. And before COVID, and actually, if I go back, there've been a couple of, I hate to say, but there've been dips, up and down dips, and I found myself struggling with that, going, well, what have we done, or what, you know, and you know, I realized that was on me, and I wasn't, and I don't know if anyone else ever felt this way, but I wasn't giving God a chance to work. I mean, just because the population dipped doesn't mean things aren't happening. And I actually got a little egotistical, I guess I would say, where I was like, you know, oh, we should do better, it's about us, and it's not, you know, we could be wasting all our time here, every single one of us, but one person might have walked in that door and heard one thing that helped them change their life. That's what I was told why we're supposed to be here. So I've had a struggle with, for me, it's been very hard with the population going up and down, but not too long, before COVID, God kind of let me know that, hey, it's not about you, just let me do the work and you get up there and be you.
Same. Why do you think people need Jesus?
I'll take
Going first, you go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I believe, and I know, I guess this is scriptural too, I truly believe that every human being is born with a measure of, the Bible says faith, but I believe the Christ. And I don't mean Jesus, but that a piece of God. And we may have a chance to wake that up in somebody. It could be anything. And it's kind of alluding to what I said before. In fact, going back to our original, when we sat at the meetings before the church was open, they were talking about someone donated money, and the church was giving us money. Numbers I wouldn't even up, like $50,000, $70,000. The numbers to me that were like, what? And people were hemming and hawing about something or other. And I said, what if we spent $70,000 and one person walked in the door in 10 years and found God and the whole thing closed up? Was it worth it? Chasing the sheep, chasing the lost coin. I truly believe, I don't care where you're from, what you believe, that there is a measure of God in everyone, and we might, if God blesses us, have a chance to wake that up. And I think that's Jesus. I think they have it, they just don't know it.
And that's why, like yesterday, it's just so important because you know what? It didn't, we were listed as a sponsor, but it's born out of our DNA. We work alongside the community. So like the Episcopal Church, the Catholic Church, they are some of our biggest partners, and nonprofits. And that was one of the goals of this year's bash, was to get it back to the original vision of how many different groups of people can we bring together to make students start the school year with what they need, with dignity and respect. And yesterday we lived that. We had 1,100 students come through that line and in their cars, and then go to entertainment and all those things. And they may not ever know that West Church was a part of that, but they got to see people loving them. And at the end of the day, church membership, it's about what you just said, showing people that love of Jesus. And that's what you do. That's what your dollars do. That's what your presence does, whether it's digital or in person. It's what your service does. It's what being on the greeting team does. It's what being on the missions team does. All those things, set up, tear down, technology, all those things matter in showing people Jesus. Lance, why do you think people need Jesus?
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback on that as well. I was going to say Jesus is love. And we, obviously, you preach that, and we exude that. So everything that we do is in love. So if we just continue to do the bash and, go on mission trips and just do community, that's what I started our original talk with, is to me, West and Jesus is community. Us building those relationships and having a close-knit family. West is family. So West is family, Jesus is love, equal to together.
For me, and this is going to sound, I hope you'll get it, but there's got to be something bigger than this. There just does. And right now, and I don't mean to be personal, but a couple of things going on in my life right now that are really hard. And, but I have a peace. And I know that doesn't come from me, because I'll stir it up. You know what I mean? So I know that peace doesn't come from me or come from any, probably just, although I have a lot of humans that will wrap their arms around me and love me up, there's something bigger. There's something bigger. And I know at the end of the day, it may be hard getting there, but I'll get there. So I think that is one. And then this is just very quickly. My daughter, Lola, she's almost 13, and she, the other night, she said, Mom, her best friends live in our neighborhood, and she said, Mom, I'm going to meet the twins. They're twins. She said, I'm going to meet the twins, and she had a little bag, and I said, what are y'all doing? She said, we're going to the tennis court to have a Bible study. Wow. And that's a God thing. Mm-hmm. I mean, he is working in her, and she told me the other day, she said, Mom, don't you worry. I'm close to him, and I'll talk to him for you. I was like, thank you, Lola. She said, I have a direct line. I got you. She said, I got you. I said, thank you, babe. Appreciate it. But that's what I love, man, that it's feeding into her. And so that's what Jesus means to me. It's just knowing there's something big out there.
Why do people, so we know why people need Jesus, why do people need this embodiment of Jesus at West from now to the future?
I know. I don't want to take over the conversation. Again, being a transplant is one of the things, when you look at the Old Testament church and really alludes to what Lance talked about, the sense of community and being able to hold each other up, it's really tough to be an island with Jesus in your heart. I tried. It doesn't work very well, and it's kind of lonely, and I think we all need some kind of community, God-related or not, just to have connection, to dump things on people, whatever it is. But like Lance said, I have nobody here. I have no relatives. They're hundreds and hundreds of miles away. And especially when I was a single dad, if I could pick up the phone and have 5 people come move a couch for me at midnight if I wanted. We've done stuff. I've had situation, Brad driving his truck behind my little townhouse to move. I don't want to say we use the church for our personal, gains or whatever, but to have the camaraderie and the community and the power. We are supposed to gather together. There is something, I felt it here with just maybe 20 people and in a musical situation where you can feel the Spirit of God in the room. I can't put my finger on it. I can't explain it to you. And I just think if people experienced that community and had a chance to be together in this type of a situation, it's just like electric, and it also keeps growing. It's like spores on the wind kind of thing.
I always go back to what we've learned and what we've done. So with missions, or I always bring up Crafted Conversations because that's something we've done for, 11 years now, I guess, something like that. That's a family. So we all look after each other, and like Adam was saying, if Tommy or Kevin or anybody called me and said, hey, come over here, I need help with this, no matter what time, we would do that. And I look forward to it, second and fourth Sunday at 6:30 on tap. So come join us.
And you guys do a phenomenal job of welcoming new people to that community.
Yeah.
It is a great way for them to get to know people without the intimidation factor of this or going to a small group or something like that. So
Well,
thank you for that. You guys
sure.
do tremendous ministry.
And it's fun because it's like you're saying, very low key. Normally I make notes of what you've talked about that day. Sometimes I freelance and didn't get as much out of the message or something.
Oh, listen, I understand
You understand that. But so, I was
Sometimes I don't either.
I was telling you earlier that we've done the summer concert series that Laura and I came up with, which is kind of fun. You literally pick songs that mean something to you, which you think that would be easy. Pick 3 or 4 songs that mean something to you, and then we play the song, and then we describe how that touched us. So that's a great way of getting the community together and for people to understand each other better. So, if we have new people who come in, they're like, oh, that's why Lance is so weird, that kind of stuff. So.
Several weeks ago, Andrea, I think it was 2 weeks ago, maybe it was last week, I don't know, talked about you got to have a tribe. You got to have a tribe. And it's true. And I think we're a tribe. And if you don't have one, call us. We'll be your tribe. Because you do have to have people that just, I don't know, who will just be there and who that no matter what, you can call them and you can say, hey, pray for me. Hey, got this going on. Hey, need this. Hey, and it's not all about need, but it's just about the people that you count on and who are your tribe. And it's so funny because I posted that on Facebook. And then not long after that, probably a couple days after that, I had a pastor, Diane, in Davidson reach out to me, and she said, can I use that in my newsletter about needing a tribe? She said, because she said, I keep thinking about it, and I keep thinking about how important tribes are. So it's just important to find your people.
And that's one of the things that I think is so important in today's age and culture. This is not a guilt trip to worship in person all the time, and it doesn't come across that way, but I say that because yesterday, some folks that were fitting the shoes on the kids, they're like, we need to come back in person. I'm like, we'd love to have you. I'd love to have you. The worship team would love to have you. The volunteers would love to have you, but look, I get it. I mean, they're like, yeah, we're hanging out in our pajamas, our dog's in between us, and we're worshiping. I'm like, I get it. Like, if I didn't get paid to be there on Sundays, I'm not sure I wouldn't be on my couch with my dog worshiping with you here. And I said, don't guilt yourself into that, and that's why we do what we do. It's why we have so many different ways, like kayak church or crafted conversations or yoga church or our small groups or our missional engagement opportunities. There are lots of different ways to plug in, and you don't have to do it all here in the room. We love it when you do. The worship team feels like, but now that we're live streaming the music, it feels different, and it feels different for you too. So I'm so grateful for all the people that made that happen again. But it is about community, because look, you can listen to gifted, charismatic pastors that are way more articulate than I am, on demand, anytime, any day. You can get any content you want in our world right now. And AI can deliver heck of content. And so the world is even changing with that. But none of those things can create community and tribe. And so I'm so grateful that that's what you all said.
I felt a little weird because we were saying about what the church does for us, and I just wanted to remember the power of the community also puts on Bash and moves mountains of sweet potatoes too. So it's not just about what you get, but the power of a group giving, it can be really massive.
And that's why we exist. We exist to give ourselves away. It's what Jesus did, and we will always do that. And so when people over the years have said, why don't you have a building? Well, because it would cost us $7.5 million. Divide that by about 500 people, and we'll all calculate what our giving would need to be. And yeah, you're laughing. Me too. And so, I'm like, the church doesn't need to have a mortgage for 50 years. And we have a phenomenal relationship with the high school. An example of that is we bought a slushy machine for the Bash, because that little snow cone machine that would generate like 2 little things of ice every 5 minutes. We don't have ice enough to put in that thing to have snow cones, and the kids love them. And the whole reason we do the Bash is because the kids love it. So we tried to bring back what the kids love, and snow cones was one of the things. So Merrick Lynch, who was our phenomenal gut work intern, researched slushy machines for me. I asked him, I said, I need you to find out everything you can about slushy machines, and I need a recommendation. And he gave me one. And I did not think through how big the thing was. And so when it arrived at our home, and it was in a large crate that's as tall as I am, Tom had some questions about that. And then when we went to set up said slushy machine this week, Dawn Lane and I spent at least 6 hours trying to get the darn thing to work. And finally, Lane suggested we read the directions, and that was a good point. The ratios were off of slushy mix. And now Dondi, who ran the slushy machine yesterday, is a phenomenal person and can do it every time from then on. But the high school, I'm like, how in the world are we going to move that thing back and forth for Halloween, for Easter? And the high school wants to use the slushy machine, so it's going to park right in there. And then they will benefit from it, and they'll buy their own slushy stuff and all that kind of stuff. And then when we need it for our events, we'll use it. And that's just an example of the partnership that we've created with Lake Norman. So we exist to give ourselves away, and the power of doing that with a big group of people puts on things like the Bash. So the last thing I want to show you today is the Bash video from this was our 13th Bash, and the 12th Bash, which was 12 years ago, we actually got around to putting testimonies in the video. And so I want you to watch this next video. It was still at Williamson's Chapel then. It was we didn't have relationships with the schools yet like we do now to have it on site at a school. And Laura Marino is one of our leaders here at West. She's a part of Crafted Conversations. She's a part of our missions team, and she is on the board. She is a West representative. The Inspire Our Children board that West started has 4 West people, 3 community people, and we work together to make Bash be in the community. And to let you know what a God thing today was, we did pivot. We were going to do Summer at the Movies, Peanut Butter Falcon today, and just confession, I couldn't watch a movie this week. I kept falling asleep. Every time I'd sit down, I would literally fall asleep. And I'm like, I can't do this. We've got to pivot. And so the message that we were going to do on Labor Day weekend is this message. They were surprised. I wasn't, but they were. And so I always question, is this right or not? And this morning I was sitting at my desk. I had my laptop. I had my work phone. I have my personal phone. Now, my personal phone and my laptop and work phone, they don't talk to each other. It's my personal phone for my family, and I don't really have friends, so it's really just my family. And I mean that seriously, like to be the pastor, you all are my family, and we're a church, but anyway, I don't have like chit-chat friends. And so my personal phone goes off, and it's Google Photos, a reminder, and I'm like, what the heck? Like, I don't even use Google Photos. Why is that up on my phone? And it said, your memory from 8 years ago today. And there was this picture of Laura and Bree and Alyssa. And I'm like, that's crazy. Because I had just sent a text, literally 2 minutes before, saying, Laura, would you mind if I talked about you in the message today? And then on my personal phone, right, that didn't have her name or anything like that, even in it, it pops up with a picture of her. And I'm like, all right, God, we're on the right track as far as who we are as a church. And that's my whole point. Those 4 people dropped everything and followed Jesus not because of their courage and all that kind of stuff, but because something happened in that moment that changed them and made them follow. And that something that happened to them is that something that happens to us when we get swept up in the flow of the Spirit. So I want you to watch this video, and I want you to hear Laura's words.
Awesome. Fishes and loaves.
I think it was the parent who came and said it was the first time her child ever had his own brand new pair of shoes.
I got a book bag and I got some crayons, pencil, and a measure.
It's probably a relief and very thankful for it.
I got books in my backpack, pencils, and some markers and crayons.
Rewarding experience.
Incredible. Awesome. Today's just awesome.
Wonderful.
The best part about today was just seeing everybody from the community come together and just enjoying it and helping each other. It was just phenomenal. And I'm so excited to be here and just be a part of it.
Oh my gosh, we were not here last year to help out, and I was really sad. And this year I specifically said we are going to be here, and the whole family came, and it has been awesome. Well, I was washing feet and sizing shoes, and the kids were so happy, and that was wonderful.
Send me. I wanna live my life as an offering. start working on Bash 12 tomorrow. Hope all of you are available to help us again. Thank you for making this one of the best events I can remember ever having in Mooresville.
I think if there's ever an example that the church looked like what it looked like when the disciples were infused with that original passion of the Spirit, I think today and this week and the last month especially really shows that.
One volunteer said, "This is the church," and I thought that was awesome. She just looked at me and said, "This is the church."
And this is what we're called to be. Without you, there's no way this would happen. So thank you for being the voice and the hands and the feet of Christ.
Thanks for being the hands and feet of Christ 12 years ago, 13 years ago. And thanks for being it yesterday, because the pictures that you saw there add about 500 to 700 to 1,000 more people total. And that's what we had. When Jesus asked them to follow him, he knew that it was not about anything other than love and sharing God and God's love to all people. That's what communion is. That's what the bread that represents his body for us. And the cup, he said, "This is my cup of the new covenant, the new law, the law that's written not in the law books, but the law that's written in our hearts. And every time you drink of this cup, I want you to do this in remembrance of me." Will you pray with me? Gracious God, pour out your Spirit on this bread and on this cup. Make it be for us your body and your blood, so that we may indeed multiply in number, in leadership, in power, and so that we may be the light and the love to all people everywhere. Thank you for West. Thank you for the people here. Thank you for the people online. Thank you for the on-demand people. Thank you for our campus in Uganda. God, you are at work in us in so many ways, and we offer ourselves to you. Use this sacrament to transform us today. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. We invite you all to come forward for the safety of you. We have the juice in the individual cups, but we still have someone that will hand you your juice. Gluten-free is wrapped in a basket, so we do have gluten-free available, and we invite you to come to the table.